I want to thank everybody for being here, and I guess we can get started. This is about the Democracy Act and voters' rights. We're looking to put a package of legislation to revamp the system. You know, this is it dates back to the 1900s. We are in the 21st century, and we want to do a lot of good things to make sure voter turnout and registration. We are 39th in the state in voter turnout and also in voter registration. We could do better, and we should be doing better, and we should be encouraging people to come out and vote. It's important for us. On the Assembly side, we had a great, robust caucus discussion. This is something that I think is a core issue that we should be taking up. Obviously, this will be the process of any other bill. We will be discussing it with all the different groups. The Black and Latino caucuses are going to be, engaged in this, as every member, because I think this affects each and every one of us, that we need to make sure we need to do better, and it's about time that we are looking at all the things with technology to make voting a better thing for the state of New Jersey. With that, I'm going to bring up the Senate President.
Thank you, Speaker. I am very much appreciative to the leadership in both houses in focusing on modernizing our election system. You know, as the Speaker said, we're looking at rules that go back to the 1900s. But you're getting to a point where the minority is going to decide the majority as far as population, because in the Assembly race, we're predicting 22 to 25% turnout. One of the reasons why, and it's not because they're not excited about the Assembly, is because we make it too hard for people to vote. So modernizing the system so people can vote early, they can vote, register online, where they can automatically be registered when they get a driver's license. It's just a natural progression with the technology that exists today. We should be encouraging participation, because the more people vote, the more the government itself will look like the state, rather than special interest groups. As the Speaker said, this is the start of a process, but we expect to move this process forward and modernize our voting system for the people of the state of New Jersey. It is antiquated and needs to be updated. Loretta?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I would assume that this package of bills, or this bill that combines several bills that were already in the legislative hopper, will get bipartisan support. Why is anybody against making it easier for people to register to vote and for people to vote? There is no logical reason for that. One particular aspect of the bill that I am interested in is the online voter registration. Our young people today, including even older people like me, are used to doing everything online, from banking. We even do our banking online, and we're managing to mostly keep that information secure. So I am delighted that the leadership, the Speaker of the Assembly, the President of the Senate, my colleague, the Majority Leader of the Assembly, that we are all together backing this bill. We know that we need to get more input from some other of our legislative caucuses, but this is a great bill, and I am very happy to be here to support it. Thank you. Lou?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I'm honored to be here, and I'm honored to be joined by our friends and working families. This is a piece of legislation that has been the byproduct of truly the better part of a year worth of work in pulling together what is, we believe, will be not only the most comprehensive piece of voting registration in the state, but really in any state around the country. A wonderful quote by President Roosevelt: "Nobody will ever deprive the American people of the right to vote, except the American people themselves. And the only way they could do this is by not voting." This bill contains what we believe is a series of common sense reforms, from the pre-registration of 17-year-olds and the strengthening of our voter fraud laws to easing voter access to military service members currently overseas. Had lunch today with a gentleman whose son turns of voting age October 20th. The way our laws are currently, he cannot register to vote, and he would not be able to vote on the day of the election. This would ease that. We have men and women that are fighting for democracy across the globe, and we have made it so next to impossible for them to vote. We actually send them sample ballots overseas and hope that they can return them prior to the election, as opposed to in today's technological age, as Majority Leader Weinberg said, the access and the ability for them to vote online. We have created online courses for them while they're overseas to continue their education, but they can't vote to continue to defend the democracy that they fight for every day. I want to share with you a couple of numbers and statistics that we think are important. As we watch others' voter participation trends decline drastically downward in New Jersey, it is obvious that it's time for this change. We need to look at our most recent history and understand the need for real reform. In 2015, New Jersey's primary turnout was the lowest in 90 years. 5.1% of eligible voters turned out. In 2013, our gubernatorial election, lowest turnout ever, 39%. Special general election in 2013 for United States Senate seat, 25%. And in the 2011 New Jersey midterms, a record low, 27%. As we move forward for these upcoming November elections, we know, and we are anticipating somewhere between 25 and a high 32% turnout. This bill is about making certain that New Jersey has improved access to voting. The Democracy Act will signal to the nation that New Jersey is ready to be a leader in open government and accessible elections and voter protection. And one component of the bill that we are very pleased about is modeled off of Oregon, where they did an opt-out provision in the Division of Motor Vehicles. Many of you know after September 11th, New Jersey invested millions of dollars transforming, upgrading state-of-the-art New Jersey Division of Motor Vehicles. We would like to follow the example of Oregon. In Oregon, it is a state with a population of 3.97 million people. They have registered voters before the law they passed of an opt-out provision. When you get your driver's license, you are automatically registered to vote. If you choose to opt out, you can. But before the law in Oregon, they had 2.2 million people that were registered to vote. They passed their law in March. From March until today, they've added 300,000 voters and now stand at 2.5 million. So when we look at New Jersey with its per capita income, when we look at New Jersey as one of the most well-educated states in the country, when we are trailing states like Mississippi that have registered voters in the 80 percentile and 75% vote, and New Jersey's numbers are continuing to trend downward, it is time to change that trend. We believe this legislation will do it, and we're very excited to be a part of this process. Thank you very much. Shavonda, something?
Thank you. Good afternoon. I share the sentiments of our leadership. This is legislation that's long overdue. However, we will continue to vet the legislation to make sure that there are limited opportunities for voter fraud. While we do believe we have a new generation of Generation Y who are technology buffs, we do need to make it accessible. This past election, there was less than 5% of the voters who turned out for the primary, which was this past June 2nd. So, however, we can continue to work on this legislation to make sure that opportunity is there for many people to vote so that the minority is not represented by the majority, and also that we educate voters on why they should vote and the opportunities to vote that was fought for all of our rights. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you again, Senate President, Speaker, Majority Leaders, and all leadership for taking a very good first step, a big step towards ensuring full participation, full protections, just engaging as many New Jersey voters as possible. You've heard the facts, right? We have our state is 39th when it comes to voter participation, voter registration. Our state is ranked 37th in the nation as to how it carries out its elections. We are behind 33 other states have same-day voter registration provisions, and New Jersey does not. It does not make sense. And I want you to consider that when you have an economy that is forcing parents, families to work 2 jobs, 3 jobs, care for children, limiting participation in our electoral process to just one short window is counterproductive. For that working mother, for that working parent who has to worry about getting a child to school, daycare, go to work, come home, fix something, and then go back back to work, it's almost impossible to participate. By expanding our process, by joining other states, we are going to be able to engage more voters. Martin Luther King had stated in his I Have a Dream speech that a man doesn't actually have full access to their humanity if they don't have the right of self-determination, self-autonomy, the ability to shape the laws that impact them. I believe that through this initiative, working together, we're going to be able to ensure that New Jersey voters are fully engaged and are respected. So thank you.
Questions?
You mentioned the 2013 special election. How much was the governor's decision to hold that special election or any other statements he's made recently motivated in terms of putting this forward?
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
In terms of you're trying to eliminate the special election to fill Lautenberg's seat. How much was that a motivating force or any statements that
It was just another piece. You know, this is a compilation of many ideas from many legislators. So that's really not the motivating force, but that's a recognition of there's a flaw in the law, and also we want to make sure that seat is filled by a member of the party of the person that has served in for at least a year.
And I think that election also, spending that amount of money, because anything we do may have a price tag, will be a lot cheaper than having special elections, and I think that went into our thinking also.
It's also, I'm sorry, it's also not any different than the example we learned after the tragedy of Hurricane Sandy, that New Jersey was not prepared from a technological standpoint to be able to deal with this. So as the Senate President and the Speaker said, these are things that we have learned and that we have tried to incorporate to make sure that we are modernizing opportunity and access for voters.
You all mentioned, or many of you mentioned the paltry statistics we've seen in terms of turnout and voting. Just, can you summarize what you think is the reason why that's happening? I mean, it can't be limited access to technology because 30, 40 years ago they didn't have the internet sophistication we have now. So what is it that some of you believe is driving this participation down?
Part of it is that people are working 2 and 3 jobs, as Anna Lilly just said, that people are so busy now trying to take care of their families that they have limited time. So it would just make sense to provide more opportunity to vote. And anybody that thinks increasing the participation is bad, I'm curious to see who's going to oppose this, because it's about giving everyone a shot to an opportunity to vote. And anybody else?
And I think that also by expanding early voting, not just to that you have to in person that particular day, you open it up because a lot of things happen in any particular day with people with their busy lives. So it becomes very difficult. So if you open up that window and give some time for before up to 3 o'clock the day before, you actually are going to capture a universe of people that will make it a lot easier for them to come. And I think that will help spur that number to go up.
And if the governor vetoes, plan?
Well, if the governor vetoes this, we have to talk about whether we take it to the voters. We're hoping that the governor recognizes voter participation is important, and we should want to embrace and have as many people possible participating in the process. But unfortunately, we have not always seen eye to eye with things. But I think the people of the state of New Jersey would prefer. But again, that's just one option, that we would have to look at.
The first step we would hope would be that this bill would have tremendous bipartisan support. Who would be against opening the polls 2 weeks before the election up until the Sunday, 7 locations in every county, giving greater access? This is why other states like Mississippi have over 80% of their people registered and 75% voting. New Jersey's in the 50s. So our first goal would be to hope that the Republicans, if the governor were to unwisely veto this, that the Republicans would stand with us and override that veto. This is about Republicans, Democrats, Independents having access to vote.
But the people that are likely to come out in greater numbers tend to vote more Democratic. So Republicans are going to see this as somewhat of a partisan move, correct?
How's it partisan to increase people's opportunities to participate in the process? The governor recently talked about how he won a large portion of the Latino vote, a large portion of the Democrat vote, a large portion of the African American vote. I think to characterize people that, we're trying to get a chance to vote, they're working New Jerseyans that are so busy in life they don't have the opportunity. Why wouldn't you, when you get your driver's license issue, automatically be registered? It's a really simple thing. Why do you have to fill out a form? You actually save money that way, rather than hand the form to them.
I don't think the Republican message is
No.
going to be let's smother voter participation so we can do better. I think they really ought to have a more appealing platform to the voters of New Jersey.
Does any of this have to do with the fact that Hillary Clinton is pushing similar legislation and similar rules, and Governor Christie says she doesn't know what she's talking about?
Well, the latter sort of explains it, doesn't it? I am delighted that we might have a nominee for president who believes in bringing more people out to vote. But we were involved in this bill and involved in the development of this bill before Mrs. Clinton made her speech this past week. Does that mean I'm not happy about what she said? I am happy about what she said, and I'm glad that we will have a spokeswoman who will be out there talking about the advantages to the American people of participating in your democracy. That's all we're talking about here. We're not talking about how you vote in terms of your party politics or issues. All we're talking about is we want Americans and we want New Jerseyans to vote in larger numbers, and we want to make it easier for them to access that process. And as I said in my opening remarks, for the life of me, I can't understand why anybody would be against it. So if somebody doesn't know what they're talking about, it might very well be our governor.
Your turn. You go.
We can talk about whether this is going to be one big bill, 12 different bills, and address the, why do something this significant in a 2-week turnaround, trying to get it done by the end of June.
Well, I can tell you, we want to put it together as one package for a complete reform. But you know what, the process, we could say the same thing that, this is something that has been being worked on for, like I said, over a year, and it's not something we rush. You could say the same thing about the budget. It's $34 billion. We are going to get it done within the next couple of weeks. So this is something that we're going to vet through our caucuses, and once we actually try and put this forward to put it on the governor's desk to see what those reactions are going to be.
Well, a more cynical person might say that you're rushing it through to get to the governor's desk at a time when the governor's talking about this, and the likelihood that he's going to veto it. This is an opportunity to put him in a corner or make him look bad.
And we have to get together. We always talk about policy and politics, and listen, you're never going to get that intertwined. But at the end of the day, this is the right thing. When we talk something that is from the 1900s, that you're trying to modernize it, these are a lot of bills that are already in the legislature that have been brought up by many of our members that we're just putting them all together. So this is nothing that's really new. This is something that's already been here.
So I would just like to speak on behalf of not only New Jersey working families, but advocates that have been working on this issue. For much more than a couple weeks have we been looking at the question of what actually is impacting voter turnout, voter participation. Our sister organization in Oregon actually was the organization that drove and pushed automatic voter registration. So we've been working for months on trying to identify what are the issues, what are the different pieces we could move, what are the different pieces of legislation that have been proposed prior, have had a huge amount of conversations with different leadership, reaching out to the AA caucus, to the Latino caucus, to leadership, to community groups. We have LAN here, we have ACLU. In our press statement, we have the NAACP who has weighed in. It may look to you like it's some quick turnaround, but this is months of work.
And what about Republicans?
So we try to do as much outreach as possible. Our organization actually first starts at the constituent level, so we have been talking to voters in different legislative districts, including those that are controlled by Republican legislators. And I could just say, like, regular New Jerseyans really like this idea. This is something that's going to be game-changing for our state and for voters, and we think that, again, it's not something taken lightly. It's something that it's part of the national discourse of how to engage voters.
Speaker, I wasn't clear on how you answered the question about whether it'll be one big bill or separate bills, because the governor is certainly likely to veto the part where he has to appoint a Democrat to a vacancy. So is it one bill and he can veto it all, or might some of it get through as separate bills?
No, it's going to be one bill, and he can conditionally veto it, whatever he may not like out of it, and that would be for us to then make that determination. As the Senate President says, there's always to take it to the voters, to get it to the people that it matters most. So I think this is the right thing to do. This is more like when we did bail reform. It was one comprehensive package.
Can I just add one thing, too? Look, we spend zero time worrying about boxing the governor in his presidential politics, literally zero time. The governor's done very well boxing himself in over the years by vetoing women's health year after year, by talking about returning an earned income tax credit and never doing it, by vetoing a home buyer's tax credit, by coming behind park testing when school districts, blue ribbon school districts around the state refuse to do it, by vetoing and not supporting marriage equality,
And you
by
did that all without sheet notes.
by not standing with so many different public policies on common sense gun reform after meeting with the families from Sandy Hook. The governor should be concerned. He wants to govern the state of New Jersey. The governor should be concerned that New Jersey is 39th in the country in voter registration and voter participation. And if you want to run for president of the United States on a democratic democracy, you want people to vote. It's our most cherished right. And he should be behind this. And if that boxes him in, then maybe that explains why he's in single digits in his own primary.
Do you have any cost estimate for some of these measures, including the early voting, this creating the online registration? Talk up a little bit.
Cost estimates, we'll get them, but honestly, they're nominal. Look, listen, adding software to make it easy, so when they register voter, when you do a driver's license, when you register to get a driver's license, that doesn't. It's actually going to be cheaper because right now they hand you printed forms. Technology is so much cheaper.
You're going to save $12 million.
Yeah, $12 million for a special election.
Those two elections
Would
were
be
paid.
saved, well, yeah, it was $12 million for each of those elections. But if you say, well, the primary should have been held, certainly at least $12 million, $24 million, the way some people count it. I mean, and the fact if what you brought up, Mike, about the governor being unhappy because he'd have to appoint a Democrat, only if it is a Democrat who's vacated the seat. And if we have a Democratic governor, that Democratic governor will also have to follow this law. So all we're doing is protecting the people's rights. If they elected a Democrat, then a Democrat should be appointed.
Was it wrong when Christie appointed Jeff Chiesa to succeed Frank Lampert?
Well, personally, would I have preferred to have seen a Democrat replace Frank Lautenberg? Yes, but the governor was well within his rights to do what he did.
But he wouldn't be able to do that under this legislation.
And neither would a Democratic governor be able to do that. Appoint a Republican to a Democratic seat.
Yeah. You know, all this talk about low turnout, one of the things in common with the last several elections is we really didn't have competitive races, or very few. Especially with the Assembly this year, there's maybe 3. I mean, do you think that the fact that races are so uncompetitive has anything to do with the fact that people aren't coming out to vote because there's nothing to vote on?
I don't ever think I was not in a competitive race, ever. And I could ask every one of the people up here, and I don't think they'll tell you they were always in a competitive race. Sometimes those numbers, when they say it's a Democrat district, how about District 1, which they actually in redistricting said was a Democrat district? it wasn't a Democrat elected to that district until Jeff Van Drew got elected there. So, no, every election I think is competitive. And if you want to ask Republican and Democrat, I think they would tell you the same.
But there were a couple districts where Democrats didn't even file candidates this year. So that's kind of hard to see it as not competitive unless there's a very good write-in candidate.
The same-day voter registration thing says it's general elections only. Why is that?
On a provisional ballot.
Right, but it's not for a primary election.
So people don't play around with primaries. So as some people said, you get a whole bunch of people come in, register as Democrats for a primary or register as a Republican for a primary to play games. We are very aware of the concerns about the integrity of an election, and that's why we said general, and it's provisional only.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.